a long time ago to look into jinn, so I am so excited for this story right now. The Mason's Bride, a demonic possession. This is the story of my brother's childhood friend. We grew up in the same neighborhood and our families have always been close. My brother's friend is a Mason by profession. He's a hardworking man who has built a stable and comfortable life for himself. However, he wasn't conventionally handsome, which made it difficult for him to find a suitable match. He decided to look for a bride outside of our city, in a more rural area. This search led him to a remote village where he found a beautiful girl. Her family was poor and he was looking for a stable and responsible man who could provide for their daughter with a good life. They quickly agreed to the marriage proposals. The wedding day arrived and the bride was brought from the village to our city. According to our tradition, the bride is seated amongst the guests for some time so people can greet her and give her gifts. Since we are close family friends, we were also invited. When I arrived, I noticed that the bride was feeling unwell. Perhaps she was feeling hot as her village is much cooler climates than our city. Even with fans running, she began to faint. Everyone was worried. My family is considered quite sensible in our neighborhood, and since my father had been ill, we had a blood pressure monitor at home. I used to check the blood pressure of sick people in our area as a community service. My mother immediately told me to go get the machine so we could check the bride's blood pressure. I rushed home, got the monitor, and checked her blood pressure, which was very low. I advised her family to give her water mixed with electrolytes to help stabilize her, but her condition didn't improve. Her in-laws then took her to a room to rest. The wedding ceremony concluded and everyone went home. Late that night, we found out that her condition had worsened. My mother went to their house to check on her and was shocked by what she saw. The bride's eyes were rolled back, her limbs were contorted, and she was foaming at the mouth. The family explained that during the marriage proposal, they were told that she had some spiritual issues. The groom immediately contacted a cleric in the village. After performing some calculations, the cleric revealed that some male jinn were attached to the girl and were preventing her from starting a new life. Since the wedding had taken place and she had also come to our city, the jinn had also followed her. The groom, with the help of my brother, took the bride back to the village in her critical state to seek direct help from the cleric. My brother witnessed everything that happened next. During the treatment, the cleric instructed the groom to press on the bride's thumb. When he did, she would sit up straight and two distinct voices would speak through her. The jinns claimed they loved the girl and would not let her start a life with another man, stating that she was already married to them. This session was intense. The cleric performed spiritual healing for 2 or 3 days. My brother stayed with his friend to support him through this difficult time. Eventually, the jinns were driven out of her body and she made a full recovery. Today, the girl is completely fine and living a happy life. She's now a mother of 3 children. This is actually crazy. Obviously, you can tell there is some type of language barrier. They did really well with writing out this story, though. I think that it's fantastic the way that they explained everything. There was a village name in there, but I could not pronounce it, and I was not going to try because it's always insulting when I say it incorrectly, and I do not want to insult anyone. Thus, I did not say it. There's the punchline to that. However, this was beautifully written, and it's kind of crazy to me because really what they're explaining is a demon being inside of a woman, which is possession. So demonic possession is perfect, but they didn't really explain it as possession because it's more of like a cultural thing. So I think it's really interesting to see from other perspectives because the majority of the time when you think possession in today's day and age, you think of like The Conjuring, you think of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Some people also think of the movie The Exorcist. This is all just a different perspective, right? Because these are cultural differences. And I think that it's fantastic. I love reading about these stories. It's really crazy to me that it was the night of her wedding that these things came out. Obviously, it was because they were like, we were already attached to her. We're already taking her. Like, you can't have her. And having the ceremony conclude with her there probably would have been very painful for her because these things wanted her and were witnessing what was happening. I also find it very interesting that the bride gets to like sit down and chat with the people prior to, because what I'm used to is somebody walking down an aisle and not seeing the bride before the wedding day. It's bad luck and blah, 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 blah. So it's really interesting to see this from someone else's perspective. I really loved this story. I cannot wait to show OP this video because this is insane to me. I'm really glad that she's happy and healthy and now has 3 kiddos. That is adorable. And I love you guys. I hope you have the best freaking stinking day ever. Bye.
I've got a scary story for you. It was sent in by Ellie, who follows me on here, and I'm just going to say this story really grossed and freaked me out. People are weirdos. So Ellie actually sent me this story and said, I don't think it's as scary as your other ones, but it was really scary because it happened to me. Let me tell you, this is actually terrifying and gross. So when Ellie was 16, she was sent to a summer camp for kids with behavioural issues. She says it was supposed to be like really fun, a place where you can meet people, play games, have someone to talk to, but she said it was like a prison, and nobody, not even the counsellors, enjoyed themselves while they were there. Everyone was just, I guess, moody all the time. Now, I don't know where Ellie's from. I'm going to assume America, but she did use both English and American terminology, but summer camps aren't really a popular thing here in the UK. On this particular night, Ellie decided to have a cheeky cigarette behind her accommodation building, and when she was there, she overheard her counsellor having a go at another kid, and she just thought, she's really in a bad mood, I don't want her to catch me out, and she decided to hide there, and she noticed this counsellor and the student go in and shut the door. It was quite late at night and she knew this door would be locked, but she decided just to wait out there a little bit longer, say she got lost, because in that way, when she knocks on the door to come in, the counsellor won't be that angry with her, she hoped. She said that all of a sudden she had an overwhelming sense of like dread come over her, and she explains it really well. She says it's like when you have an injection and you sat there waiting for them to put a needle in your arm, just hoping it's not going to come. She said it was like that. She could feel that something was going to happen or go wrong around her, and she didn't know what was going to put the wheel in motion. But she said her getting up and going to the door put the whole story in motion. While she was walking back to the door, she noticed in the tree line a person just standing there, and she thought it was another kid that had like snuck out. So she shouted over like, hey, are you stuck out here as well? And this person turned their back towards her and got on all fours and like crawled but ran into the forest. I don't know why I'm laughing, because that's gross. Ellie just said that her jaw hit the floor. She shouted, what the fuck? Felt nauseated because she said the sight was sickening, and just ran to the door and banged on the door so loud. The camp counsellor opened the door, was really angry at her and really didn't want to listen to her shit. He was just like, get to bed. It was lights out for everybody in their little rooms, I guess, and she said that she didn't get a chance to tell the other girls in her room because they were all, I guess, asleep, and her bed was right at the very back of the room, which she says she's so thankful for. She says she's lying in bed just thinking about this absolute freak crawling into the forest, and she's so paranoid, and she says all night she's just kind of like staring at the door. She says the door is always open and the light is always on. It's kind of like camp rules, and she eventually drifts off to sleep, but that's when she's woken up by like weird slapping sounds. She opens her eyes and notices that the sound is coming from the hallway, so she looks towards the door and this slapping sound is getting closer. That's when she sees this guy, this person, like running on all fours, making this slapping sound with his hands and feet. What the fuck? Past her room. I guess she must be thinking, maybe I'm paranoid, maybe this isn't real, because she turns away from the door and goes back to sleep. How Ellie writes this story, I was both like in shock with fear and also pissing myself laughing. How she wrote this was beautiful. She said she wakes up again, and this time she has that feeling of dread again, and she just feels like someone or something is watching her. So something makes her turn and look towards the door, and that's when she says she sees this man, this crawling man, sat in the doorway like a dog, just staring at her, staring at this room full of sleeping girls. What the fuck? Ellie, I guess, finally has the right reaction and screams, and that's when she says this guy stands up and runs away normally, you know, like a normal person would. This wakes up all the girls, wakes up the counsellors, they all run into the room, ask her what she saw. But this is a camp for kids with behavioural issues, so they kind of don't believe her shit, but they have to make a report from it. Anyway, this report makes it to the police desk, and the police come and interview Ellie along with other girls to see if they've noticed any strangers anywhere. Ellie tells her story, but the police say they couldn't really find any evidence that a stranger was there. She stayed at that camp for another 3 weeks until the summer ended, and she said nothing happened again, and there was no other weird sighting of this weird crawling dog man. People are such freaks. Out of stories that I've read of men being absolute weirdos, like, this doesn't surprise me. And I 100% do believe that an absolute creep of a man would be acting very weird around an accommodation full of girls. It's literally like written in textbook. Men do this shit. This is day 8 of 31 Days of Scary Stories. If you like stories like this, please interact with the buttons. It really helps me because my views are really low. And if you've got a story to share with me, like Ellie's or scarier, please email me or DM me.
If it is nighttime, you really do not want to watch this. I have had a lot of stories submitted to me from people that lived in the Denver Harbor, Houston area, but this one takes the cake. This story was submitted by a TikTok user named Alex. I will tag him below. Out of respect for everyone involved, this is all allegedly. Alex is the youngest of 4 brothers, and this story takes place back in the 1980s. I'm going to put a picture of the house here. This house was built in the 1940s, and before Alex and his family ever moved into the house, it already had a very tragic history. For the sake of the family, I'm not going to go too far into it, but I will say that some dark things happened in this house. Things that may or may not be related to dark ritualistic practices and violent crimes. Just know that the history of the house may have contributed to some dark entities being drawn to that area. That being said, the history of the house was not a concern for Alex and his family when they moved in. After moving in, this family quickly realizes that this house was haunted. Lights and radios would go on and off. The family members would hear disembodied voices in the middle of the night. But this family was having fun with the fact that their house was haunted. It didn't really bother them. It honestly became like a running joke between the family members. Especially because Alex, the youngest of the 4 brothers, would actually get caught talking to someone out of his window. And they would be giggling for hours. His family members would be like, "Alex, who are you talking to?" His mom would even go outside to check to see if anyone was there, and no one was there. But Alex would swear up and down that the girl from school, a girl that he had a crush on, was coming to his window at night, and they were just giggling and having these conversations. But Alex was the only one that was ever able to see and talk to this little girl that was supposedly visiting him in the middle of the night. These types of hauntings would go on for about a year until this family experienced something so horrifying that it forced them to move out. Alex's oldest brother, who's about 25 years old at the time, sneaks off to the garage to smoke a cigarette. Moments later, Alex hears his brother stumbling back into the house, screaming for their father. His brother is racing towards their parents' bedroom, screaming and yelling, just, "Dad, Dad, there's a lady hanging in the garage." It's the middle of the night. His father gets out of bed. He's confused. He's a little bit angry, but he can hear the panic in his son's voice. Their father's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" He pushes his son out of the way. He's quickly making his way to the garage, and sure enough, he sees the exact same thing that his oldest son just saw. Alex, who's 12 years old at the time, hears that there's something going on, so he kind of sneaks his way into the garage where his brothers and his parents are. Alex kind of nudges his way past his family members that don't even notice he's there because they're staring in complete shock. As soon as Alex is able to see what his family members are looking at, the blood just runs from his face. As Alex is standing there, in pure horror, he's noting every little detail of this woman. There's a rope tied around this woman's neck. There's blood and bodily fluids coming out of her mouth. The entire garage just smelled foul. This family has no idea who or why this woman is hanging in their garage. She looks to be about in her 30s. She's got dark hair. She's white. She's wearing this red oversized hoodie that goes down to her knees. She's got jeans on, but no shoes. The entire family is staring at this hanging woman, and she's still swinging as if this just happened a few moments ago. When Alex's dad realizes that his 12-year-old is in the garage with them, he yanks him back into the house and they call 911. The entire family evacuates the house and they're waiting outside for the police. When the police arrive, Alex's father just kind of points to the house and is like, "She's in the garage, the door's unlocked." Several moments go by and the officers come back out of the house with this pissed look on their face. One of the officers approaches the family and says, "You know it's illegal to make a false police report." At this point, the family's starting to panic. They're looking at each other because they really saw a hanging woman in their garage. The family starts pleading with the officers, like, "No, like, we're telling the truth." And the father would go inside to try to show them, but there was no one in the garage. The officers kind of looked around, but they didn't find anything, so they rolled their eyes and left. Needless to say, a few weeks after this incident, the family was out of there. To this day, all the members of Alex's family remember the hanging woman. Alex would go on to say that because of this event, he believes in the paranormal. And his family never forgot. That is all I have for this video. If you like spooky content like this, you can follow me if you want. If not, stay safe.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, you won't forget. Don't eat too much, cause you gotta stay fine, but come on, bestie, it's story time. I know y'all like that. Don't act like you ain't like that. Anyways, for today's story, let's call her Jenny. So this happened to Jenny. Jenny's Haitian, and this happened to her when she was in her 20s. But one day after work, Jenny went to chill at her mom's house. Her mom used to sell food, beer. I know the whole Haitian setup with the men and the dominoes. and cards. You get it. If you're Caribbean, you should know. Obviously, if she's around, y'all know how some of these Haitian uncles be. Like, they try to talk to her. They be old as hell trying to talk to her. She always shut it down, and she would even tell them, like, listen, I don't even do Haitian men. I tried it one time and never again. I don't blame you, sis. There was this one guy, and he wanted her bad. She already knew better, and he wasn't even her type, but he wanted her bad. He would like try, and she would always shut him down until one day he decides, you're gonna stop shutting me down. So he went and did what he needed to do. Next thing you know, her and this man are getting close. They start getting a little too close. Now, her mama peeps this. Her mom already knew what was up, right? She's like, I watch my baby girl shut you down all the time, and all of a sudden she's interested in you. Yeah, right. So one day he comes, and she walks up to him, and she says to him, I know what you did. I don't appreciate what you did, but I'm gonna take care of you. Don't worry about it. I got you. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She went straight to the elders and handled it. Now, before I go on with the story, some of y'all may not know, but I started to tap into music this year. I dropped one song, and it kind of went viral. It did really good. You guys encouraged me to do this. I'm going to be performing at the Unity Fest after party, and you better like it. And you better come. Seriously, guys, I'm actually so terrified. This is moving too damn fast. Anyway, if you love me, please come and support. Okay, back to the story. Basically, Mama went up to him and was like, I think you need that, and I'm going to give that to you. So she went to the elders. They did what they had to do, and baby, whatever they did worked, because she snapped out of it almost instantly. And then realized, like, oh shit, this nigga really had me under some kind of like whatever. And the funny thing is, after mommy did what she had to do, that man never came back around. Actually, after she spoke to him that time, he never came back around. A few years later, Jenny finds out that that man was, she don't know why, she don't know how, but she just knows somebody took him out. Hey y'all, so that's the story. Don't forget to comment y'all snacks or whatever it is that y'all eating. Honestly, if you're gonna post some seafood boil, don't even post it. You're gonna make me mad.
Okay, so story time from when I lived in a haunted house that was more haunted than the one that I currently live in. Yes, I have lived in multiple haunted houses, okay? Also, excuse all of this, and if I sound crazy, I just got off a 12-hour night shift, okay? But I'm not, nobody's home, and I'm afraid to go to sleep. So, story time. Okay, so the house that we used to live in is in the same neighborhood that this house is, okay? It's on the other side of the neighborhood. But we rented that house versus we own this one, okay? We really like the neighborhood and the school, so we decided to stay. It needs to be said that I live in a military town, and we live off base like 10, 15 minutes away from the main gate, okay? This neighborhood is predominantly military. Mostly everybody here is military connected, whether they are a veteran or active duty. Okay, so that means people are in and out. There's always houses for sale. There's always houses for rent. There's always new people and people leaving. Okay, it's a lot of energy going back and forth, okay? Okay, so the old house was the most beautiful house I have ever lived in. I had a love-hate relationship with this house. I loved the house. I grew to kind of feel some type of way about it because of the stuff that we experienced. But the house was gorgeous. I love it still, okay? It's a ranch-style home, okay? It's not a 2-story. But it has a attic. Most houses here do. But it's like a crawl space type of attic. You're not going to be able to get up there and move around too much. But it has a window that you can see when you pull up. Like when you pull up in a driveway and you're looking at the house straight on, you're going to see a window. Like, looks like maybe it's a second story, but that's not. That's the attic, okay? The reason I bring up the window was because it did not matter what time of day it was. It didn't matter the weather. It didn't matter what the season was, where the sun was. That window was dark. And I noticed that when we came to look at the house before we signed the paperwork to rent the house. And I had mentioned it to my husband. I said, that is a dark window. What do you think's in there? My husband don't believe me. My husband thinks I'm crazy, which fair, valid. But I noticed that immediately. Okay. And it was one of those things, even to this day, because every once in a while, I'm not going to lie, I drive past there. And I don't know why I drive past it. Not because that sounds like I'm a creep. Not because I care who lives there or anything. But every once in a while, I just get the urge to just drive by the house, Because any time that I pulled up in the driveway, I felt, I don't know how to describe it. I felt some type of urge to just look at that window. And it was the weirdest feeling because I would feel scared to look at the window, but I would feel like I have to look at the window. And it would be a kind of thing where I would start looking at the window, and I would ease into it. And then finally I would look at it straight on because I was afraid of what I was going to see. Really, that's what it was. But I had this uncontrollable urge to look at this window, no matter it. And that happened from the very first time I saw the house to the day we moved out the house. Okay. Yeah, that's it about the old house for now. I'm going to bed, but come back for part 2.
Someone submitted a story about playing the elevator game. I am back with another spooky story. So they wrote, last summer, we're gonna call the person who submitted the story Wendy. So Wendy says that last summer she was backpacking in Seoul, and she had been obsessed with the elevator game videos online. She wanted to participate, but only to prove that it was fake. So she found this old hotel, almost empty, 12 floors, perfect. She says she enters this elevator, again, not expecting anything to work. She started with the sequence of the buttons, 4, 2, 6, 10. Wendy says that by the 5th floor, the elevator felt wrong. She says she felt like the air was pressing down on her heavy, as if she wasn't alone. In the corner of the elevator, could have sworn she saw a shadow move. However, when she turned, it was nothing there. It was just her. So at the 10th floor, the elevator door opens. And at first, it looked like the lobby, but the color was a little more gray, as if she was like in this parallel world where everything just seemed darker. And she said that there was this red light just buzzing like overhead. That the desk was empty. The desk where they're supposed to be workers, empty. Everything was silent. Wendy looks up, and that's when she noticed her. She said that there was a little girl that was standing outside the elevator, barefoot in a faded dress. Now, what's weird is that when the elevator doors first opened, she didn't notice anyone standing there. It was quiet. She was looking at the lobby, and this little girl seemed like she appeared out of nowhere. Now, she says this little girl looks like your typical little girl in a horror movie. Her hair covered her face, and she was just staring at her. Without saying a word, the little girl turns around and just starts walking down the hall. Wendy says she chest is tight, and every rule that she has read literally said, do not leave the elevator, don't follow anything. However, before she can even make a decision for herself, her legs just started moving anyway, by themselves. It felt as though this little girl was pulling her, like there was this invisible thread just pulling her. She said, now the weird thing is, the second she stepped 1 foot out of the elevator, the silence just broke. She's suddenly hearing whispering, voices that are like on top of each other, and even laughter. Now looking ahead, she said that the hallway stretched impossibly long. She said the doors on either side of the hallway, it seemed like there was stuff going on inside of the doors, like there were shadows moving, lights blinking. Finally, the little girl stops at the very end of the hallway. The little girl is slowly turning her head around the hallway as if she was trying to see if something was coming. Wendy says this is when she heard a woman's voice whisper in her right ear, saying, do not follow her. Look at me instead. And she said that voice almost took her out of this trance, because she spun back and noticed that the elevator doors were getting ready to close. So in a panic, she says she lunged inside that elevator and hit what she thought was 1, as in floor 1. However, as she's looking at the panel, all the numbers seemed like they were confused. Where it was 1 said 10, where it was 7 said 4, but she just pressed the button anyway. She said the door slammed shut. She said that elevator dropped so violently that her stomach dropped with it. She actually thought that the elevator itself was gonna crash. So she sat down in the elevator to brace herself for impact. She said her ears were ringing bad. And she said on top of that, the lights were flickering and she was hearing these strange noises in the elevator like something was scratching to get in. But suddenly it all stopped. Lights stopped flickering and ding, the elevators opened. But this time, she was back in the real lobby. People were there talking, life was moving normal again, and she said she almost just collapsed with relief. And she says she looked at the security mirror as she's walking out. And y'all, why she says she saw the little girl standing there, waving to her. Shit. Y'all will fuck around and find out. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you want more spooky content, make sure you follow me right here on TikTok. Like I said at the end of every single video, I love you, my abducted humans, from your favorite Haitian homegirl. And let me know in the comments, would you play the elevator game?
As promised, it is time for another spooky story. If you have a spooky story of your own that you would like to share, feel free to comment or send me a DM. I can either tag you or leave you anonymous, whatever makes you most comfortable. Make sure as well to add me on Facebook, either as a friend or follow me at Autumn in Appalachia, same handle. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I'm going to go ahead at the very beginning and put a trigger warning on this. We, of course, are watching our wording, and I am changing certain words as to not violate community guidelines, but this is of a heavier nature, this story, some graphic shit, super creepy, so there's your warning. This is a story about how my dad encountered somebody who was possessed. Now, a tiny bit of context about my dad. He is not a heebie-jeebie person, and he was kind of reminding me of this story before I told it to make sure I got all the details right, and just straight up verbatim said, "Haley, you know me. I am a combat veteran, and I'm not scared of shit, but this rattled me." So back in the mid to late 90s, my dad was very involved in ministry at the church that we attended. And long story short, a mother came up to him one day and from the church and pretty much just said, "I need your help." So this mother goes on to explain that she has a son in his mid to late 20s and that there was something very dark spiritually going on with him. She essentially just explained that she believed he was possessed. He also was struggling with like substances and things like that, but she asked my dad, along with some of his other ministry friends in the church, to come over and pray for her son. And so that's what they did. Around a week or so later, they were able to get some free time one afternoon. So my dad and his friend Orban made their way over to this mother's house. Keep in mind the trigger warning because it gets dark from here. So when they get to the house, he goes inside, Orban is behind him, and they begin to walk down the hallway toward the son's bedroom. We're just going to call him Jake, okay, for the story. So they're walking toward Jake's bedroom. Before my dad even gets to the door, he said that he could already smell a really horrible smell. It smelled like rotting, decaying something. So they open the door, and Jake is in there, fully unclothed, sitting on a couch. He has bodily fluids, like red bodily fluids, fecal matter smeared all over him, all over his body, his face, everything. It was all on the walls. It was in carpet. He had, oh my goodness, he had taken a Dremel and filed all of his teeth down to a point, and he had a bunch of posters, life-size posters of musicians or celebrities that had committed suicide, and he had them hanging upside down on his wall. He had cut the heads off of all of the posters and had taken animal bodily fluid, red bodily fluid, and smeared it where the head of the posters would have been. He had also used the same red bodily fluids from animals to write all over the walls, just things like that. There were animals that were unalived and had their heads removed, hanging upside down in his room, and liquid was being drained into like bowls. The mother explained that he would take, he never went out of the room in his door. He only used the window, and he would climb in and out of the window at night and go and take animals like pigs, chickens, whatever he could find, whatever pet he could find, and use them in rituals in a really like screwed up way, right? So my dad looks at Jake and says, "Jake, we're here to pray for you if that's okay." Jake stands up on the couch and starts speaking in a voice that should not be human, and did not sound human. And he was speaking some sort of other language, sounded something like Latin. I know that's cliche, but this is a real story. This really happened. And he is just like screaming. And Dad said that when he looked into his eyes, it was not like looking into a person's eyes. It looked animalistic. And the way that he was acting, his mannerisms, it was very animalistic, very primal in a not human type of way. Next thing you know, this man, I'm not kidding, jumps backward onto the wall behind him. Like he's standing on the couch and he jumps like a spider onto the wall behind him with his arms and his feet, and he begins crawling up the wall backward, like defying gravity. And he is like crouched there like some sort of an animal, screaming at them and making some sort of guttural like shriek or sound. And my dad said that he could hear his friend behind him, Orban, just start praying under his breath. I'm with Orban, like I have chills talking about this. Orban fell to his knees and started praying at the foot of the door. He was too scared to go in the room. And so this guy, Jake, is a few feet up in the air on the wall, and he crouches in this way. My dad said that Dad could tell he was about to jump. He was about to like leap onto them and attack them. So as you can imagine, Jake ends up leaping off of the wall, and in midair, bad bitch move, my dad catches him and slams him down on that couch. He said that when he slammed him down on the couch, that Jake started in a very animalistic type of way, biting and chomping, trying to like bite my dad's arm, his fingers, his face, like whatever he could get a hold of. And my dad was luckily able to hold him in such a way that he wasn't able to actually bite into him, but he is still making these very like guttural kind of screams, just the whole 9 yards, like some real exorcist type shit. My dad has never encountered anything else like this in his 50 some years, and so he just starts praying for this guy, and this goes on for a long time, like a few hours, where they are praying for him. And Dad is, he eventually became like more docile and wasn't fighting as much, but the demons that were in this man released him, and he became a completely different person overnight. He immediately quit using the substances. He went and got like a new set of teeth and stuff, of course, because he had, destroyed his teeth with that Dremel. The mom said she called my dad the next day, bawling her eyes out, and said he is in there ripping the carpet out of his room right now. And like, thank you for helping give me my son back. And so, yeah, the story has a happy ending. He ended up getting married, having children. So they definitely do not believe that it was just a substance problem. It was also a spiritual problem. And whew, that's the story. Like I said, if you guys have any spooky stories of your own that you would like to share, feel free to comment or send me a DM. I probably will share either a follower story tomorrow or a story about a patient that my mom had in the hospital one time as a nurse. So stay tuned for that.
Surprisingly, this duende story is not from Mexico. However, the family did move from Mexico to the United States. We are not safe. So this guy says that growing up, he knew his mom was very spiritual, that she even took some kind of drink that made her look into her past life. And on the completely opposite end was his dad, who was a very big skeptic. He says his dad doesn't even like to talk about anything paranormal, like he will cut the conversation. He doesn't even want to be involved in anything. So one day he says that his mom's sister, so his aunt, came to their house and gifted his mom a duende. The duende was like a tiny figurine. He said that it was smiling and he had really dark green clothes on. The duende had a little pointy hat on, and he remembers when his mom came up to him and his sister and told them that they needed to treat the duende as if it was another person in their family. He recalls that in that moment when the mom said that, they started laughing because they thought that she was joking. Nevertheless, they did agree to the mom that they were going to treat the duende like he was part of the family. But he says that in the beginning everything was fine. They had placed the duende like on the bar of the kitchen and everything was normal. However, he says that little by little, and it's gonna sound crazy, but strange things started happening in their house. There was one day where he was taking care of his sisters. So he has one sister that was close to his age and another sister that was 5 years old, and she was the youngest. So again, he's taking care of his two sisters, and he noticed that the youngest, the 5-year-old, had gone to the restroom, but it had already been an hour and she hadn't came back. So he gets up, he goes to the restroom door, and right before he's about to start knocking on the door to see what's going on because he was worried, he hears his 5-year-old sister laughing like crazy inside of the restroom. He still knocks and he's like, hey, is everything okay? When he knocked on the door, he said that the laughter just stopped immediately, and he asked his sister, is everything okay? And she's like, yeah, it's because it makes me laugh so much. Of course, he was like, who's making you laugh so much? And the little sister responds, my new friend. He explains that she answers like if it was normal, like it was nothing to her. But when he heard that, he got like the chills and he was kind of scared. He asked her to open the door, and when she did, she just came out of the restroom running past them and laughing. And when he checked into the restroom, there was nothing in there. After his mom got home that night, he did explain to her everything that happened in the restroom, and that the mom reassured him that she was going to take care of it and look into it and see what happened. He honestly thought that everything was going to end there because now his mom knew she was going to take care of it, but unfortunately that is not what happened. After that, he says little things started happening. He would lose something and then would find it in a completely different room where he knows that nobody would have put it. His keys, his wallet, like things like that would appear elsewhere. Like he knows that no one had touched it, but they would appear in random places of the house. At first, they all just gave the excuse that maybe we're tired, maybe we're misplacing it, but it happened so much that they couldn't use that excuse anymore. His younger sister, the one that is between him and the 5-year-old, stopped sleeping by herself. She said that she felt like somebody was constantly watching her. And on the completely different end, the little 5, sorry, I just heard it in Spanish and now I'm translating and I'm scared, okay? So on the opposite end was the 5-year-old, who they were now catching her talk by herself, and then she would say random things to them like, my friend says that they don't like you. Okay, well, tell your friend it's on site. Tell your friend it's on site. There was one night where he woke up because he had the weirdest feeling like something wasn't right, and he was reaching for his glasses that he had put next to his nightstand, and when he grabbed them, they were literally broken in half, like if somebody had intentionally just broken them apart. That's also the moment where he was like, this is it, I've had enough. Like, he went to his mom and he's like, this duende is doing these things to us, and the mom had to accept that she did feel like it was the duende as well. That same night, the mom put the little duende figurine in a wooden box with salt and holy water, and then she said some like prayers that the lady had told her that she needed to say to the duende. They ended up putting that wooden box with everything into a closet, but unfortunately he says that it got worse. That same week, when they put the duende into that closet, when they were all in the living room, they would hear like kid footsteps in the hallway. They would hear where like dishes would fall and break, and sometimes where the doors would slam by themselves. There's also one night where mom, dad, and the 3 kids were all watching a movie in the living room, and they clearly heard where somebody just like ran behind them and into the darkened hallway. The 5-year-old wasn't talking to her friend anymore, and she was having nightmares, and where everyone would hear her screaming, please don't take me, please don't take me, I don't want to go with you. There was one particular night where everybody was asleep and everyone heard the dad screaming. They all got up, ran to the parents' bedroom, and the dad was saying that something was whispering in his ear. He says that it was the first time that the dad had ever even accepted that something strange was happening and that something was going really bad, because again, he was a skeptic and he didn't believe in any of this. After this, the mom was telling her neighbor everything that was happening, that she didn't know what to do, and that's when the neighbor said that she knew how to get rid of that duende, but it was going to be like a permanent like get away from us type of thing. They had to bury the little figurine away from their home into the dirt, and that they had to respectfully say goodbye to the duende. They did end up doing the ritual, but they were still scared because they didn't know if it was gonna get even worse or if it was actually gonna go away. He said after that, everything did calm down. They did end up moving into another house, and he says that that same night, the weirdest sensation that he was very familiar with came back to him, where he woke up in the middle of the night and he knew that something was not okay. When he gets up, he says that he, from far away, could hear like laughter of a child, and almost like if that laughter was making fun of him. However, the laughter went from being far away to then sounding like it was coming from underneath his bed. The next day, when they were in the garden, he said that he noticed that little 5-year-old looking at a corner of that garden, and she was staring at that corner for a good minute until she went up to him and said, there's some people calling me from there. He's unsure if they actually got rid of the duende or if the duende followed them to the new house. And that is the end of the story, because this is happening in real time right now, and basically there's nothing else to add at the moment until something hopefully not happens. But what do you guys think? They didn't even tell us what part of the US. They could be our neighbor. What the hell? I'm not scared. Everything's fine.
What exactly did my neighbor see? Our neighbor told my husband and I the story, and we're going to call it The Man Outside. So my husband and I are very close to our neighbors, Justin and Ashley. They're so cool. But there had been a week that I kept on hearing our dogs just barking and barking and barking. A few days in a row. And I had even mentioned it to my husband one morning, and I was like, did you hear the dogs barking the other day? Like, they were just going and going and going. Didn't think anything of it. One day we were outside just chilling, and our neighbor ended up telling us that he ended up seeing something right outside. And I'm outside right now. So he says that him and his wife were asleep in their bedroom, and he hears dogs just barking and barking and barking and loud. So he goes up to the window, and he's kind of peeking, and he's looking around this way, and my house is the last house on the left. There is nothing. There's just like woodsy areas. And he says that he looked this way towards the cul-de-sac, and he saw this man. And mind you, it was cold that day. It was freezing. It was like 30-40 degrees. For us, that's cold. So he says that he sees this older man wearing a turban. He was shirtless. He had like, I'm sorry, I don't know what they're called, but it looks like a long skirt, and it was kind of like draped over his chest. He had this long wooden stick, and he was kind of like walking slowly, like across from my side to the other side where our front neighbors are. So he said it was kind of something like this, the turban and then something like over his chest, but he was shirtless. So naturally he's freaking out because we live in San Antonio, Texas. We don't really see many people that dress like that, especially on the side of town that we live on. So he's freaking out because he's like, okay, why is this older, elderly man shirtless outside? It is freezing cold. Where did he come from? Because all the side of my house and behind my house, it's all woods. So he wanted to go outside and talk to this man, but because of the side of town that we live on, he needed to go get his protection just in case, because you just never know the mental space that people are in. And he says that this man, you can tell that he was elderly because he was walking so slow. He was like struggling to get from one side across the street to the other side. So he runs to the bedroom, grabs it, runs back, checks the window first, is looking for him, and he can no longer find this man. So our neighbor is like, no way. So he literally runs out, opens the door, runs out, goes to the middle of the street, and he's looking around, and this man, this person, whoever or whatever this was, is gone. And it's a little confusing because he was like, this was an elderly man that was walking very, very slow. How did he get from point A to point B that fast? And where did he go? Because it's all woods, like, and it's fenced. To this day, neither one of us know what that is, what happened. But if any of you have experienced or seen anything like that and you might know what it is, please let me know in the comments, because to this day we are baffled. We are bamboozled because we don't know what the hell. And it's so crazy because I feel like I'm always the one that sees all the spooky, scary stuff. For some reason, I attract it. And my husband never believes me. He thinks I'm crazy. But it was kind of refreshing for someone else to experience something by where we live. And it's not only me, because like, I believe him. I believe him. So anyways, if you guys know what this is or what the hell I'm talking about, please let me know in the comments. And if you guys like all things spooky, all things scary, and all things paranormal, make sure you follow.
This story is about a woman who had a literal lechuza hunting down her baby. The person who submitted this does not want me using her real name, so we're gonna call her Maria. About a week after Maria brought her newborn baby home from the hospital, she was up late one night when she happened to hear crying. She went to check on the baby thinking that maybe her baby had woken up, but when she went to see, the baby was completely knocked out. The crying continued, so she's walking around the house trying to figure out where this crying is coming from when it hits her. The crying is actually coming from the outside. She's confused, so she kind of peeks through the blinds but doesn't see anything and tries to just ignore it, thinking maybe it was just some sort of animal that was out there. This continues on for the next couple nights. Finally, on the third night, she pretty much has had enough and she needs to figure out what is making this noise in the outside. So she decides to kind of like make a huge mistake, open the door and kind of like peek out and kind of get a really good look around the whole perimeter of her house. When she looks out, she sees it. She sees the face of a woman literally on a tree branch, but it's just the face of a woman. This completely terrified her, so she went right back in and slammed the door. Not long after, she starts to hear footsteps on the roof of her house. She had like a tin roof. It stayed up there making noise and like scratching at the roof until about 4 a.m. If you know anything about lechuzas, they can't stay out past a certain time. They actually have to make it back to their body, or else like I think they get punished if they don't get back at a certain time. Bye. The lechuza kept coming back every night, no matter how much they prayed and holy water and like priests would come and like bless over her house. The lechuza was very, very persistent on wanting Maria's baby. Maria ended up having to move. Thankfully, she did have family in a different town, so she was able to kind of move over there. From that point forward, everything stopped. She believes that had she not like left, this lechuza eventually would have made its way into her house.
I grew up smack dab in the middle of Appalachia, and there's always been a story that's followed my family. And now, as I'm an adult and I can sit back and process it, I realize that it's a story about mimics. When I was younger, I just thought it was folklore. I just thought it was something like a story within my family, but I don't think it really was, and I'm going to tell you some details about it. Disclaimer, a lot of people in my family have had experiences with the little girl. I personally have not, but I'm going to tell you some of those secondhand experiences. And one of them, my dad told me about. For all of my childhood, I remember stories of the little girl, and this little girl was a small child, probably around the ages of 4 to 5 years old, who had long blonde hair and was always said to look like one of my cousins. Again, different people in my family had different experiences with the little girl, but I always remember the stories being that every time they saw her, or they saw a glimpse of her, they thought it was my cousin. And I don't remember it being malicious in nature, but I do remember her just popping up in random places, and everyone in my family knew the little girl or had a story of the little girl. So growing up in Appalachia and in the middle of nowhere in a rural community, it's super normal to live around all of your family. So I did that. My house was at the bottom of the hill, and then my grandparents' house was on the top. I had aunts and uncles that surround them, and my cousins. I come from a really big family, so I have tons of cousins, and my mom has 12 brothers and sisters. Anyway, so I remember my dad telling me the story of the one time he had the encounter with the little girl, who again looked like my cousin and had long blonde hair. So he was in the kitchen, and there was a window above the sink. He tells me that he was looking out of the kitchen window, and when you looked out, you could see the driveway where we would park our cars, the end of the driveway. And he was looking at the car, and he saw the little girl. But again, this looked like my cousin, so when he saw her, he assumed it was my cousin. I believe that I was at school. It was like the middle of a weekday, and I was at school, but my cousin at this time wasn't old enough to be in school, so he had thought that she had ran down and was playing around the cars. So he either walks outside or he walks to a window, I can't remember which one, and he calls her name, and he was like, "Don't be playing around cars, and do your parents know you're here?" And then he didn't see anything. In fact, it was almost like he saw somebody playing around the cars, and then when he went to go tell them not to, nothing was there. I believe there was a story my grandmother used to tell of she went into the kitchen one day. As she's walking into the kitchen, she sees the back of the little girl. Of course, she sees the long blonde hair, the build of the child, and she thinks it's my cousin. But again, I don't remember anything malicious about the stories because I always think mimics, I think malicious behavior, but the little girl never really was bad, evil, ill intent, I think, from the stories I can remember. So maybe it's not a mimic, maybe it's the spirit connected to my family, not sure. So I just text my cousin and asked her, "Did you ever see the little girl?" And she responded in all capital letters, yes. So her story goes as follows, which jogged my memory, so now I can say I actually do have an experience with the little girl. My cousin reminded me of the story when she was playing with my other cousin upstairs in what we called the old house. And the old house was a 100-year-old plus farmhouse that my grandparents had lived in later in their life, and then my aunt and my cousins had moved in. So they're upstairs playing Barbies, and the way this is set up was the upstairs was our playroom, and there was toys everywhere, and then downstairs was the rest of the house. So they're upstairs playing Barbies, and they hear a little girl singing, "Ring around the rosy." Another time, my cousin was walking to my grandma's house, and again, my family all lived around the same holler, and she looked over to where my cousin, who the little girl always is said to look like's house, and she sees what appears to be my cousin peeking around the corner, but it wasn't her. She said she thought it was my cousin, but the little girl just turned around, giggled at her, and ran off into the woods. I reached out to another cousin who said he hadn't seen her firsthand, but he remembers stories that his mom had told him about. They were walking again up to my grandma's from their house, and they looked over and they saw the little girl who they thought was my cousin just peeking out around the corner of the house and then disappearing. So is the little girl a mimic, or is she just a friendly spirit that's attached to my family that just so happens to look like my cousin? I'm interested to know what you think about this story, and if you have any similar stories about energies, spirits, small children, etc., clinging on and being attached to your family, let me know in the comments below. If the little girl is a good spirit, is it common for spirits that have good intention to completely mimic people who are alive in the real world? Is it common for them to mimic their entire body language, their personality, the way they look? Everyone who has seen her or had an encounter with the little girl swears she looks just like my cousin. Anyways, let me know your thoughts below.
So the story happened when I was like 7 or 8 years old. You know, I remember coming home from school and nobody was home yet. So I fixed myself something to eat. I was watching TV, and we have an open floor, so I can see the whole kitchen, dining area from the living room. And I remember glancing over and seeing this man standing like literally in front of the fridge. I'll never forget like what he was wearing. I remember he had blue jeans, a checkered shirt, and I remember that his clothes looked like if he had been in an accident, and like his face looked pretty beat up, you know? I remember staring at it. I don't know how long I must have stared at it, but I looked away because I kind of like reacted, and when I looked back to him, like he was no longer there. You know, I kind of got scared thinking like somebody had broke in, and I remember like standing up, looking around the house, making sure, you know, like everything was locked, and I kind of just sat on the sofa until somebody finally got home. You know, when my family got there, I kind of told them what happened. And, you know, they brushed it off like my imagination, whatever I was watching on TV. So a couple weeks after this happened, my mom tells me that we're going to Mexico. And when we get to Mexico, you know, my mom has family that come over, and I can overhear them talking about her cousin that had passed away. So, you know, my mom comes to us and like tells us, hey, you know, we're going to have to be going to a viewing. You know, my cousin died. Gives us a whole 411. So I remember as we're driving to the viewing, I start to become like really sad, and I don't understand why I'm so upset, you know? I've never seen this man, but I've also never been to any kind of viewing or funeral. Not at that time, you know? So we get to the viewing. Mom's aunt comes up to me, and she's, you know, the mom of my mom's cousin that passed away. And she's like, you know, come with me, come sit down, let's go pray for him, you know? Maybe it'll help you feel at ease. And I remember we started doing the rosary and we pray for him. And so I see everybody standing up and going to go look into the casket, look at his body. And, you know, his mom asks me, do you want to go see it? And I was very hesitant. Like, I've never seen a dead body. Like, no, I kept telling her, like, no, I think I'm fine, you know? And she was pretty insistent. And I remember finally being like, okay, you know, let's go. So I walk over to the casket, and when I look into the casket, the body that's literally laying there is the exact same man that I seen in my house weeks prior to this. He didn't have like the same scratches how I had seen him in the house, but I could not forget that face, you know? And I felt this peace. Like, I didn't feel like crying anymore. I didn't feel sad anymore. I finally felt at peace after I seen him. And so, you know, everything's over, and I go up to my mom and I'm telling her, Mom, that's the exact same man, you know, like, I'm trying to like put 2 and 2, like, why did I see this? And, you know, the conclusion that maybe when he passed away, he kind of just came to say his last goodbyes. And I was the one that was fortunate to be here that day.